Intense.
We hope this podcast wakes you up inside. You know how it is. I'm your host, Rudo, joined by AJ Haefele, to bring you an unusual episode of the DNVR Avalanche Podcast. Look, we don't dive into rumors fully that often on this show.
That's fair.
But today we kind of going whole hog with it. So
yeah. So it turns out yesterday was not Thursday.
No.
So when I was talking yesterday at the end of the show and was like, "Hey, we're gonna have a guest on tomorrow," that's because I thought it was Thursday, and it turns out it was Wednesday. Today is Thursday. We do not have a guest on because he is coming on tomorrow.
Yeah, Friday is guest day. Friday is the pseudo kickoff to our draft coverage, I suppose.
Yeah, I think that's a fair way to put it. Given we're going to be going guest heavy with a bunch of draft focus in the next week.
Whole bunch of it's going to be a sprint to the finish line for us over the next 3 weeks, basically.
Yeah.
So,
Also, we just got out of our big meeting talking about the big draft show that we're going to have on draft night, in which we are having a draft party at the bar. So,
I'm so pumped for it.
Go ahead and plan to be there for that. Those of you who are locals.
I'm saying the NVR bar draft.
We actually have stuff for you guys to do and win and give away, and
there you go. You heard it from the man himself.
You're gonna want to be there for all of that.
I'm gonna be there. That's for sure.
You had better be there, otherwise that show
is gonna be something
awfully different.
Yeah, can't wait for it. NHL draft day 1, October 6th. So still a ways to go before we get there, but it will be a rumor madness all the way up through, I'm sure. Before we dive into the rumors, though, let's talk about the one major bit of news. The interesting trade by the Minnesota Wild, trading Eric Stahl for Marcus Johansson 1-for-1. And for reasons.
I thought it was said best by a Wild fan in my mentions yesterday, who is actually a delightful person, and I try not to hold it against him that he's a Wild fan. But he said, anytime that you can trade for the more expensive and lesser player, you just have to do it.
That's pretty much what happened here. Look, is Minnesota just like gambling on the fact that Stahl is 35 and they're hoping he just falls off the cliff here?
Even if that was the case, that's what his value was?
Yeah, I know. It doesn't feel
You
great,
don't think that there could have been a contender out there that would have been like, hey, Eric Stahl as our 2 or 3C would really at $3.5 million. It's $3.25 million. Like,
yeah, this
really,
is
really weird. Like, why would they do that? This was their best center, and they trade him for a guy who's played center in his career, but has been significantly better over like what's now like a pretty lengthy career. He's been much better as a wing than a center, and I don't get it. I can't believe that Eric Stahl's value was that low. Had they just sent out a group text to every GM saying, "Hey, we're interested in moving Eric Stahl," you had to think that they would have gotten a multitude of offers that were more intriguing than Marcus Johansson.
Just look at the Stahl's past couple of years. He has a 65, a 76, and a 52-point season, and then in this shortened year, he had 47 points. compared to Johansson, who has been significantly injury riddled over the past couple of years, the highest of which being this year in a 30-point season. And his career high in points back in 16-17 was 58. Stahl is just a better player as far as offensive production in every single sense of the imagination. And both of these guys, does Johansson have 1 or 2 years left? I think it's only one. Yeah,
that's the thing. There was no financial benefit. The only thing is Johansson is younger.
Yeah, that's it. But he's still a UFA at the end of the year. So,
but he's more expensive. There's no retained salary. There's no bonus money hidden. It's all straight up. It makes no sense.
I can't follow it just for the Wild at all.
It doesn't make any sense.
Who knows? Maybe something else will come out about it later, but
like I would agree with Evan in chat. I mean, Stahl, I think I think you look at his career and I think it's going to fall just shy of Hall of Fame worthy, but the Hall of Very Good, certainly.
Many players Marcus Johansson would kill to be in the Hall of Very Good right now. We'll put it that way.
Yeah. I mean, you look at Stahl's career and he's had a spectacular career.
Yep.
He's won a cup. He was a high level offensive producer for a bunch of years in Carolina. It fell apart. He went to the Rangers and was nothing. And then for some reason found the fountain of youth in Minnesota. That's all good and well. Even if you just look at him as a 45-point second line center at 35 years old, $3.25 million is extremely affordable.
And it's more than what you can expect out of the guy you just traded him for.
Straight up. And he's like this. I'm like, it makes perfect sense from Buffalo's perspective.
Totally. Oh yeah.
While they he can go in there, he can help ease Dylan Cousins into that lineup if they want to make him a center, if they want to have Cousins on his wing. They've got Olofsson, they've got Skinner, they've got Reinhart, they've got Eichel. It's a good top 6 now.
Yep.
It was a top 6 with some nice pieces before, but it's a pretty good top 6 now. And so from Buffalo's perspective, okay, great, maybe they finally make the postseason, but I would have to think that if they're out of the playoff race, this dude is trade deadline fodder for a contender, and I don't know why Minnesota didn't just start there. You're telling me Winnipeg couldn't, who's always looking for a second line center, Winnipeg couldn't use that Band-Aid for a year?
Yeah,
and at 3.25, they don't. If the price was Marcus Johansson, what?
This is the type of guy that gets a good haul at the deadline for most teams, not one dude who's walking in a year.
Yeah.
So
makes no sense to me from Minnesota.
I agree. But good for Buffalo, I suppose. Moving into the rumor mill, Elliot Friedman's 31 Thoughts came out today. The major rumor he had the Avs mixed up in was with Arizona, but more focused on Hjalmarsson than anything else.
The hammer.
Yeah.
So Hjalmarsson is a guy who his entire career, he has been one of the best defensive defensemen in the league. Elite. I mean, elite defensive impacts his entire career, right? This last year, he finally fell off.
Yep.
If you go and you pull up, you go and look at Micah's heat maps, which I always post all the time. Everybody knows I like those. Big drop off, still effective in that role, just not elite anymore. So it's fair to wonder, still better than league average. So he's still above average at 33 and 33 years old, 1 year left, $5 million on the deal. Kind of the type of guy that we were talking about, where they wanted, if they were going to go and get another defenseman, it was going to be a guy that was a set and forget piece that they were comfortable playing 20 minutes a night. He's got all the championship pedigree that you would love, even though, I mean, we talked about it yesterday. They don't need to continue to go get those guys, but that he has that is always going to be a feather in his cap. He blocks shots and he kills penalties. And I tell you, those are two things that they could have used a little bit more of against Dallas.
So when we talked about it previously, it was more of a package deal, potentially. Something sweet in the pot for Arizona if the Avs are going to get Kemper. They can take some salary off their hands on the side and Hjalmarsson as well.
Yeah.
If you're going for Hjalmarsson directly, do you want Arizona to retain any of that salary? I know it's only 1 year at $5 million. The Avs can probably afford it, but
it depends on the price. If without retention, it's like a 7th round pick, I'm cool. I'll eat the money.
Sure. I can't imagine they're just trying to dump him for a 7th, but
I mean, we've seen multiple guys. I mean, Nick Bukestad got traded for a fake pick.
It's true.
Jake Allen got traded for what was it? Like 2 mid-round picks.
It's something
like we're
for like
seeing
a 5th. Yeah.
Teams trying to shed money by just giving guys away for picks. That's the beauty of the draft pick system, right?
Yep.
Is that you have currency that the league gives you every year. You can trade for it, and you can just poof, that guy is gone. That money has disappeared. Oh, bye-bye. So, if they're look, Hjalmarsson just can't have very much in the way of value. He's coming off of the worst year in his career in a long time. He had injuries. He wasn't very good in the postseason. His age and his contract situation are both working against him. I think that the Arizona's interest in this, it just has to be financial.
Yeah.
And if they were to if they were to take $1 million on, if they were to retain $1 million, great.
Then you're paying what, like a 5th?
Yeah, the price for him should be if you go any higher than a 4th rounder, you've made a bad deal.
Yeah. I'd even be questioning a 4th, to be honest, but
I would be uncomfortable, but I mean, at the end of the day, dude, I'm just anytime you're trading a 4th or lower for an NHL player, as long as it's not Nate Thompson, I'm like I'm really gonna struggle to throw too much of a fit. I am gonna be hard pressed to get upset about giving up a 4th or later for most NHL players.
Yeah. So with the Hjalmarsson conversation also comes the Kemper conversation, and we found out there are a handful of teams in on Kemper. Friedman not specifically mentioning the Avs, but Carolina, Calgary, Chicago, Edmonton, San Jose all mentioned to be involved in Kemper. A couple of those teams involved with Oliver Ekman-Larsson as well. Basically, the point I'm getting at is Arizona is selling. Arizona
is open for business.
Yeah.
Is there anybody else on Arizona you want?
Me,
or I would say, would you have interest in? Does Phil Kessel do anything for you?
No, not anyone they would actually want to trade.
Yeah, I'd be really if Phil Kessel, they'd have to retain for me to be comfortable on that.
They'd have to retain a lot. I was gonna say
like $2 million.
Phil Kessel ain't what he used to be.
Sure, but Phil Kessel at 4.8 playing on,
that wouldn't be plan A for me. I'll put it that way.
Only 2 years left on that deal. I don't know. I'd be very meh. I will say the guy that they hired coming out of St. Louis, all he's ever watched in his career is how to be ultra aggressive.
Yeah,
because St. Louis is super active, doing all kinds of things.
That's true. You know what?
No, Lawson Krause is a hard pass.
A potential previous target there for the Avs in Derek Stepan. 1 year left on that guy's deal. No interest.
I do Phil Kessel before Derek Stepan. I'm not messing with that.
I mean, I don't necessarily disagree with you, but
not that I would dislike Stepan. I mean, he's just not
for you.
He's fallen off so hard, and he's still a try hard. He knows what he's doing. Blah blah blah. But
Yeah.
I'm good. Connor Garland, that's the guy they keep because he's still super cheap.
Yeah, I don't see how they get rid of Garland. Can't imagine they're moving Keller.
Yeah. The only kind of like in between guy that I might be able to be talked into would be Dvorak, and I just don't like his contract.
Yeah, that's gonna be a no. 5 more years, man.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I just don't like the deal. I like the player, I just don't like the deal.
Defensive side, same kind of story. We've already talked about how OEL is a no for the Avs.
Yeah.
Goligoski.
Everybody should be for sale though. Like Goligoski and Demers are both bad now.
Yep.
Chalmerson's coming off of his worst year in a long time. Like, I tell you, if he's healthy and he's what he was even just 2 years ago, it would be super duper worth it.
Yep.
For Colorado, it would be, and I think that's the temptation.
Well,
you roll the dice that he's worth it.
He might be worth it. Again, this conversation is one where if he's not worth it, it's easy to make that guy your 7th D as the Avs.
Yeah.
But, we'll have to wait and see on that. We do need to take our first period break.
I will say, unlike with the Kemper conversation, like you wouldn't be giving up a first round pick and being like, well, we can salvage this because he's our backup now.
Right.
Like you'd be giving it, the price for the price for Hammer would have to be too affordable. Where
if you gave up a 6th for your 7th D, you're like, well,
like you're like, okay, well, this is kind of like the Brassard thing where it's like it didn't work, but you're not really that bothered by it.
Yeah,
you're just kind of like, that sucks.
I agree. The value is important when it comes to those conversations. If you want to get a variety of value, use Breckenridge Brewery as your official beer, just like us here at DNVR, with 8 different types of Breck Brew on tap down at the DNVR bar. Or, of course, if you want it at home, you can always get it delivered with an app like Drizzly, and use the Breck Beer Locator online to find the type of beer you like nearest to you to go on and pick it up, whether it be the agave wheat, the hot peak, the strawberry sky, the mountain beach, you name it. You can find an amazing beer that you will like. They have a beer for everyone. Breckenridge Brewery, highly recommend them. Can't get enough of them. Go try it if you have not yet for yourself. And our DraftKings picks of the week. This time, AJ, the Isles fan himself over here, picking Game 6 to go into overtime between Tampa Bay and the Isles at plus 340, I believe it was.
Yeah, I love the drama of it. Season on the line, the Isles have honestly responded. This has been a closer series than certainly I expected, and they've gotten lucky. No Steven Stamkos. Braden Point's been in and out of the lineup. Like, that's the great equalizer. You take off the top 2 centers from any other team in the league, and they'd be buried. That Tampa Bay is continuing to survive is a testament to Anthony Cirelli and an absurd amount of depth.
Yep.
Like, if you want to know why I think Tampa Bay is the most talented team in hockey, the fact that they're surviving without their top 2 centers in the Eastern Conference Finals tells you an awful lot.
Credit to Andrei Vasilevsky. He's been excellent for them in net as well.
He's just steady, man. Steady as it goes.
Yep.
Can make the great saves. He can be spectacular. They haven't needed him to be great, and he hasn't. Like, he just does his thing, dude. He's so set and forget.
Must be nice. We also have my pick, which gets away from hockey. I went with the Rockies. Nolan Arenado to hit a home run and the Rockies to win at plus 895. I like those odds. Yeah. I'm not sure how confident I am in those things happening, but when it's plus 895, you got to take your chances. You got to go.
You at least have to feel like, especially because it's like, oh, the Rockies to win, like, totally possible.
Yep.
Nolan to hit a home run. Granted, the worst year of his career,
not
but
great, but it's still Nolan.
Still where you're like,
that could happen reasonably. Yeah.
I'm good.
Yeah. So that's my bet this week. I like my chances, even if it isn't a slam dunk. Sometimes you have to take that risk to get the biscuit at the end of the day. DraftKings Sportsbook. Head on over and download their top-rated sportsbook app now and use promo code DNVR when you sign up to get a bunch of amazing odds boosts and other fantastic offers, including bet $1 to win $100 on any football team in week 2. Great deal there. That's 100 to 1 odds. So you got to take that where you can get it with that DNVR promo code. Sign up today at DraftKings.com/sportsbook. Must be 21 or older. Colorado only. Eligibility restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-522-4700. Second period of the DNVR Avalanche Podcast presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. Now it's time for us to gamble a little bit into some of these rumors. We've already talked about Hjalmarsson, but I want to go back to the team that we started this show with. It certainly sounds like Minnesota is not done with their offseason.
They can't be.
Right. They have work to do. Matt Dumba, the biggest name being thrown around.
I would say, are they seriously going to go into the season with Marcus Johansson and Nick Bjugstad as their top centers?
Where do you put Koivu below them if they were to bring him back?
I think he's retiring.
You think he's done?
I think, but look at he scored 2 goals last year, dude.
He wasn't good.
There's his days as a top 6 guy. Like, he was always hard pressed as a 1C. But his days as even a formidable, like, top 6 player, they're over.
Behind him, yeah.
They're over. If he slips even a little bit on defense, he has no value.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
Yes, I am forgetting Victor Rask.
Victor Rask, Elite 1C. Okay.
Yeah, you would be correct. I am forgetting him.
As is the rest of the league.
Yeah, I mean, Koivu's been on a steady offensive decline for a couple of years, and he never really had. He was never like a great offensive player anyway. But now he had 2 goals last year. I think it's done, man. And if I'm him, I don't look at that team and go,
this is not what I want to come back to.
Yeah, like we talked yesterday about them making a lot of sense for a guy like Braden Holtby. Them being in on the goaltending market makes a lot of sense. Dubnik's in his last year. Alex Stalock certainly isn't a starter, so makes sense. If you want us to talk about Hjalmarsson, first segment.
Yep.
I promised we talked about it.
Talked about it quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean, Matt Dumba's got to be next to go.
Just contract-wise, we were talking about it before the show, and it's like, yeah, Wild could have him play out this year of the contract, but realistically,
they're in the same position they were in the last expansion draft because they just gave Brodin a no movement clause. They're now in bed with Spurgeon, Suter, and Brodin.
Yeah,
those guys are all NMC. Boom, done.
So unless they wanted to protect 8 skaters,
which they definitely could protect 8 skaters, because if you're looking at that forward core,
it's not great. You're
talking about, okay, you're going to protect Kevin Fiala.
Well, they have to protect Parise and Zuccarello, though, because of the
they have to protect Zuccarello. Okay, and then the Fiala, so there's 3. The fourth forward, I mean, I guess you're at that point you're talking about Greenway, maybe.
I guess, yeah.
We talked about Galchenyuk the other day on the forward show, so if you want, you can go back and listen to that one. I mean, Galchenyuk's leaving, so that's just more offensive talent that they're hemorrhaging. Not that he was that great. Yeah, like right now, expansion wise for Minnesota, I guess you would be protecting Matt Dumba over a Luke Cunnin or an Eriksson Ek.
A Donato or something, yeah.
Yeah, or a Donato, whichever forward you don't choose in that last Greenway whatever spot.
Boy,
but
that team's offense really is not good, is it?
It's really not.
Looking through it, yeah, man. There's not a lot of talent up there with an aging Parise and an aging Zuccarello is going to be what's leading that forward core.
So I'm this is where I ask you. New Jersey calls about Matt Dumba and offers 7th overall. If you're Minnesota, do you just take it?
I would, given their current state. I mean, this is not a playoff team.
That would give them picks 7 and 9.
Yeah, you're like, there's a decent chance you walk out of this draft with like a Sanderson and whatever the best forward is at 9.
That's at that point, you take Askarov, right?
You could even go Askarov if you wanted.
Have 2 top 10 picks like that, and you're not at the top like Ottawa, where you're like, oh, it's too high for this. Like, Minnesota would have to have Askarov be one of those 2 picks.
I don't know if they'd have to be, but
I think if I understand like the whole concept behind goaltenders and using high picks on them, but if you have picks 7 and 9, and you're looking at Minnesota's organization top to bottom, like they have some decent goaltenders. I think they just had like the AHL goalie of the year in Kakkonen down with the Iowa Wild. So like, you're right, they don't have to, but I feel like, look, dude, you're in a perfect position at that point. If you have 7 and 9, just do it, dude.
I wouldn't complain if it were the Avs in that situation, but I do wonder for a team that clearly desperately needs forward and defense as well. If they're moving Matt Dumba off that D-core.
They're in kind of a weird spot with that D-core because Spurgeon is signed until the end of his career. Suter, same thing.
Yeah.
Brodin just re-upped. Like, those are 3 really good defensemen to build around, but 2 of them are already over 30.
Yep.
So it's like kind of what's the plan here? And I think that's sort of what their biggest problem is that what's the plan here? Is there what's their whole goal? What's their vision for the franchise? Are they competing? Are they rebuilding? Are they retooling? What are they doing?
Right.
A stall for Johansson deal just doesn't.
They made their own bed with the situation when last year they were like, all right, we need to figure our stuff out. We need to get younger. We need to build this team. And then they're like, how about Matt Zuccarello?
Yeah. And then we're going to listen to our GM give the most bizarre press conference and then fire him.
Yeah. That was a press conference for the record books.
Yeah. Lizard eyes? What?
It's kind of like a lizard out there.
What?
The Minnesota Wild are something else, is what we're trying to say. And they're not in a particularly good spot, no matter what they do.
If they put Dumba on the block, they should be able to get something for him, even though he's overrated.
Oh, yeah, no, they should get real value out of a guy like Matt Dumba.
But I like, you get 7th overall, like, okay, New Jersey, that obviously helps them.
Yep.
It gives them the guy that they thought they were getting when they traded for PK Subban.
Oops.
But then they become like the all like name team where you look down their roster and you're like, dang, these guys should actually be pretty good. And then they're like, oh, they just got all the overrated guys.
It happens. Wouldn't be the first team for that to be their downfall.
I mean, look at Minnesota. They've been doing it for years.
Hey.
Yeah, I just think that
is there, if you're the Avs, or I mean, I know it's a division rival, but if you're a team looking to contend, is there any vulturing going on here? Is there a carcass picking that you can really do off this Minnesota team?
The only guy that I would seriously have like a strong interest in, like if Suter would move, I would totally take Ryan Suter.
Sure, but
like, I'm sorry, but I would. I know people are like, oh, his contract, but that guy's still good. I would do that. The guys that they would realistically move, no, not really.
Yeah.
Like I
Hold
would have a
Eh.
super interest in Greenway, but
probably not going to move him. Yeah.
yeah, like they have no reason to do that.
Which is, and this is part of why Minnesota's in such a tough spot. Of guys that they can get value out of, it's essentially core members of their team or someone like a Matt Dumba, who arguably a core member of the team, but the value just isn't there when you're looking down their forward core. Sure, maybe you get something for Parise. It might even be hard to sell Zuccarello. With the rest of these guys, no one's picking up Rask. No one's taking Fiala.
Well, I mean, I would take Fiala, but again, like coming off of a career year,
you're not taking him for super high value, though. Like,
he's coming off a career year. His value should be decent.
So
he's still what, 23?
He is 24.
24? Yeah, I would have no problem with Kevin Fiala. And I think it would be, especially given his importance to them, that price would be uncomfortable.
High. Right. Well, but that's what I'm saying is in Minnesota's spot, it's very hard to find a value where both teams are happy, unless they want to just give away Eric Stahl, apparently. But
yeah, I mean, we're talking about this, but 2 days ago, had we talked about Eric Stahl for Marcus Johansson, it would have been like,
what?
Why?
So maybe that's the key. Get in while Minnesota is having a lucid dream where they think they're getting good.
Yeah, the Andrew Ladd for Parise thing makes sense because the Islanders just don't have the cash to burn like they are on Andrew Ladd right now.
Yeah,
and if they use the same expansion rules, which I imagine they will when it comes to LTIR guys, then Andrew Ladd's NMC would not apply, so they would be able to protect another guy. And Parise, like, you think the Islanders wouldn't take Zach Parise right now in the middle of this race for a guy that's not even playing for them? Of course they would. So, but I mean, they're gonna run into some money problems trying to bring back Barzell and all that anyway. So the Isles are gonna be interesting to watch in the next couple of off seasons. But with Minnesota, I think that they're one of the key teams when it comes. Minnesota and Arizona, I think, are two of the big players here to keep an eye on. Low key, one of the other teams that they that I think should continue to be very active is Carolina. Not only in addressing goaltending, but they've got some big contracts coming up. That's a defense that has. That's a defense that has a lot of interesting names on it, and when you're talking about the expansion draft, you know, you're talking about them maybe having to lose a guy, and if they could get decent value for him now,
why hold on to him? And
because if you try and do things right before the expansion draft, teams are going to take advantage of you because they know that you're desperate.
Yep.
But like right now, you know, even so Dougie Hamilton's going into the last year of his deal, but and they'll re-sign Hayden Fleury, but Hayden Fleury, Brett Pesce, Jake Gardner, Brady Shea, Jacob Slavin, Dougie Hamilton, that's a great 6 guys for a defense.
Yep.
And you're only allowed to protect so many of those cats. So
yeah, you might have to look at managing that value there.
There's a reason that Patrick Laine continues to be connected to them because that makes a ton of sense.
That's a conversation that we are going to get into in our third period. I do need to let you guys know about our gaming sponsor, WGT Golf, the #1 golf app out there, loved by more than 20 million people around the world. Well, over 600 of those people are in DNVR clubhouses. Go to dnvrgolf.com to download the game and search for DNVR3 to join our clubhouses where we have tournaments all the time. You can challenge other members anytime, any place around the world. Just get into a game, play some match play, play some stroke play, play some closest to the hole. You can even go to the virtual Top Golf and try to stick it from up high, hitting off of the rafters up there. I don't know what they're called, the levels, I guess. Either way, WGT Golf, whether you want to do that or play true to life courses, they have you covered with an extremely awesome game that you can play both on your phone and your computer. Again, dnvrgolf.com to download and search DNVR3 to join our third clubhouse. Third period of the DNVR Avalanche podcast. Everything we had to say about Ryan Reeves is at the end of yesterday's show.
Yeah.
But the conversation I did want to get into is one of the other big names swirling in rumors in Patrick Laine and the Winnipeg Jets. Is it a realistic option for the Avs? I doubt it.
I was trying to put together this morning, talking to the fiance, I was trying to put together
some kind of deal that would make sense.
Yeah, because I was like, this isn't really a Colorado conversation, but if it was, and I was thinking it would, like, for Laine, it would have to be like what I gave her was Byram, Comfer, and a first, and maybe something else on top of that.
Yeah, that's real steep.
So maybe like Jost instead of Comfer because he's cheaper.
Sure.
And they can give him more opportunity and he's younger and, blah, blah, blah. But something like that.
Pick a bottom six youngish forward, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Comfer or Jost. And so it would just be like, and then the Avs would have to re-sign Laine next year and it would be
not cheap.
Yeah, no. The after the year that Ehlers had, so Winnipeg is a great. They're really a great franchise to get into with a lot of different things because they've never really had a good second line center, like they should have with Brian Little, but he's getting old and he's hurt now, unfortunately. They need defense, but they're also a franchise that already had to be very careful about the money that they spend.
Because it just takes them more money to get people to stay.
Yeah, and like it's not a franchise that's just flush with cash. They have to be careful how they spend it.
Yep.
And now when you talk about all the lost revenues, this is an organization that has to sell out
every day, basically,
like all of their home games. And so you're talking, they lose a bunch of revenue. Like this is the pandemic and the fallout from that. It's going to hurt Winnipeg among the most teams because they were already a lower market in terms of cash flow.
Yep.
And now, you look at a contract like that of Nick Ehlers, it's more valuable than ever because he's a quality player who is signed for multiple years. You're not moving that guy. He's got 5 years left. Scheifele's got 4. Connor and Wheeler all have multiple years. Like, I could understand them moving Wheeler because he's 34 and he's making $8.25 million, and that's a shitload of money. But beyond that, they have no reason to move any of these other guys. And the only reason that we're talking about Laine is because Laine is kind of a one-dimensional guy who they have to work hard to get the most out of. He's making $6.75 million this year. He's 22 years old. But if you look, in 4 years, the lowest goal total he's had is 28. And that's because the season ended early. Otherwise, he would be a 30-goal scorer all 4 years of his NHL career. His one dimension is goal scoring, which is the most important dimension if you're going to be one-dimensional.
We just saw Jeff Skinner get $9 million as a one-dimensional goal scorer. So,
sure. And like Laine he's 22. He's trying to get better. He's got his whole career ahead of him to work on that all-around game. It would not be hard to imagine him, like, you drop him in Colorado and you're like, okay, well, you don't have to mess with Taylor Hall. You don't have to worry about aging. He and Finnish best friend Mikko Rantanen can just tear this up together. It would cost obviously a pretty penny, but whatever. Like, that's fucking Dayton. The whole idea behind Laine moving is that he's gonna want a significant raise next year.
Yeah.
And Winnipeg is gonna be one of those teams where they're, all the talk about, hey, there's a team sitting around, there are teams that are talking about $71 million internal cap. Well, right now, with a whole bunch of decisions to make, the Jets have already spent $65 million.
Yep.
They've already got $65 million committed.
And that's with 4 defensemen signed to their NHL roster.
Right. That's with and 2 of those are Carl Dahlstrom and Tucker Poolman.
Right.
So you're gonna need help.
Yeah.
That's only with a forward signed. So like Line A is like, if you're gonna shift that $6.75 million around, that's where you send him to Carolina for a Brett Pesce.
Yep.
You know, who's got a 4 and change.
Which, by the way, man, Line A in Carolina would be scary.
Well, and then you would start having the question of like which forwards do you protect as well from Carolina? Because if you just take one of those defensemen off, those defensemen are still going to be intriguing. But then you have to protect Jordan Stahl.
Yep.
You have to protect Sebastian Aho.
Teravainen.
You have to protect Teravainen. You have to protect Niederreiter. You have to protect Trocheck.
Yeah, probably.
And obviously, Svechnikov is on that list as well.
Yeah. So they don't have a lot of wiggle room there.
And so you add, if you add Line A to that group, he becomes the 7th forward, and then, you're still losing a defenseman.
Which you have to lose something at the end of the day. So
it's and they still have, again, they'd bring Hayden Fleury back, but they still have Jake Bean in their system, former first rounder.
Soon to be bust.
Never been a Jake Bean fan.
Me either. But the point is, Winnipeg's in a bit of a tough spot because of how they have to manage their money, and it doesn't make a ton of sense to get rid of anyone but Line A for reasons you already mentioned. Not just that, but someone like Ehlers, Winnipeg has pretty much his entire prime locked down. So that's something that's really hard for that team to give up, given how hard it is for them to go get guys in free agency, especially at cost-effective contracts.
Yeah.
I don't know that Line A actually ends up getting moved.
It'd be really hard to.
Yeah.
Because he's 22 years old and he looks like he's on his way to scoring 500 goals in his career, which PS puts him in the Hall of Fame.
Pretty handily. But how does Winnipeg get themselves out of this corner without moving Line A? Is there going to be a massive interest in teams picking up Blake Wheeler? Do they even want to move Wheeler as their captain?
I think they have to. I mean, it's business time.
Yeah.
He took enough of a step back last year. After back-to-back 90-point seasons, he drops all the way down to 65. That's like, obviously, I mean, you drop him in Colorado and you're like, oh, 65 points, like, great.
Cool. Done.
You'll still take that, but as a 34-year-old, you're paying 8.2. He's got 8.25 for the next 4 years. Yeah. So his age 34, 35, 36, and 37 seasons are going to be very, very expensive.
That's the thing, though. That's going to take away from his value. There's not a lot of teams that are going to be super hyped on paying a dude $8 million until he's 38.
Yeah.
So,
and like, even if they retain $2 million,
right?
Like,
it still saves them $6 million on the dollar. Yeah.
What are you gonna get in return that's gonna make it worth it while you're still trying to compete? So, really, and like Blake Wheeler's had like one of the most interesting careers.
Yep.
So
it's interesting to say the least.
And like they're in a tough spot. Like they way overachieved this year because of Connor Hellebuck.
Yep.
And that's the other thing is like you don't want to waste the fact that you have an elite goaltender in his prime signed for the next 4 years.
Who's balling out.
Right, like who's going to win the Vezina this year, and I guarantee you got some level of Hart Trophy support.
Yep.
Like even if he predictably takes half a step back next season, he's still among the best goaltenders in the league, and you don't want to waste that. The same way that Anaheim's like, we don't want to waste John Gibson.
Yep.
These are teams that have elite goaltenders in their prime signed that you want that to be a thing. You don't want that guy to get to 31 years old and be like, dang, now we're good and our goalie is declining.
So, as we wrap up this show, AJ, any other major rumory topics that you wanted to touch on?
I mean, there's so much going around the league right now. Everybody's talking about everything, and it's an interesting time because teams are forced to do stuff.
There's a lot of chatter, but it's just hard to pick up on what's real and what's nonsense right now.
Like Florida has a ton of money on their defense.
Yep.
Like Keith Yandel, Anton Strawman, and Mike Matheson are all
and a team that has
very well compensated.
Been in talks a lot of needing to shed cap or wanting to shed cap.
Yeah. And like they're about to lose Mike Hoffman and Evgeny Dadonov out of their top 6, and because of their system being loaded at forward, I think they're going to be okay.
Yeah, just drop Owen Tippett in there and be cool. But their defense, and I mean, they're in a tough spot because they need to figure out how to save the $10.5 million sinkhole in their net. But
they've got the 12th pick.
Yeah,
and it's what's interesting. Like they've got Tippett and Denisenko coming to that can replace those guys and drop into their top 6. You know, maybe they get something out of Borgstrom still. They just drafted Spencer Knight, and he had a great freshman year. Like the guy looks like the real deal. They need defense so badly, and it's so bizarre that it's like they've done such a poor job in the last couple of years, just handing money out to defend him. Mike Matheson is signed for 6 more years at just under $5 million.
Yep.
And like that's a dude that they have played it forward.
That says it all right there. I think. Like, I don't know.
My goodness. What they do is going to be fascinating because they would love to move out Yandel and Strawman and continue to try and build around Ekblad, but maybe Ekblad is the guy that they have to build around. You know, maybe that's the guy that they build a deal around. Maybe you go, maybe Winnipeg and Florida just try and solve each other's problems, and they go line A for Yandel or for Ekblad.
Wow, that would be wild.
I mean, wouldn't that be like seismic?
Yeah, just completely like shatter the Central and what are they in the Atlantic, I think, not the Metro.
Souped up version of the Johansson Jones.
Yeah. The trade is 1-for-1.
Straight up. Like maybe they just Ekblad and Line A, they just boom.
I'm done.
It doesn't solve Florida's problem, but then Florida can immediately turn around and put him on the block and try and do whatever they want with him.
You never know. We've seen stranger things happen. We've seen players get traded and then flipped back into division for a better price.
And like we're still a year out, but teams have to also now they have to seriously consider the ramifications of the expansion draft here that's coming up after this next season. That's next season. So now they have to worry about it. You can't just kick that can down the road anymore. It's time. It's time to plan for it. There's always, you know, you're going to see a bunch of 2-year contracts.
Yep.
So that
bunch of non-commitments.
Yeah, exactly. And you're going to see a bunch of teams that have to start making their decisions today.
Yep, with little information and on a bit of a crunch. That's the reality of this NHL offseason.
Yeah, it's going to be fun, and it's interesting that, you know, this is Colorado's financial prudence over the last couple of years. This is like the last time we get to talk about them just exploiting the fact that they've saved up a bunch of cap space while also getting good.
Yep. It's the end of that line. Hopefully,
you know what they should do with that cap space?
Just sign Taylor Hall.
Just sign Taylor Hall.
That is the end of today's show. Thank you, everyone, for watching, listening, however you consume the podcast. Always much appreciated. Again, highly recommend you guys check out the live show. We were talking with chat quite a bit during this one. Always fun to see the rumors flying around. If you want to interact with us live, jump onto YouTube. Be sure to subscribe and like so you can see when we go live next. That's 5 days a week. We are on here. Y'all know the drill. We will be back to talk to you guys again next time.